Hello. Welcome to the Austin Bitcoin Club, also known as ABC. I'm Paul. I will be your moderator tonight for a very exciting panel called Built Different, the Rise of AI-Powered Bitcoin Builders. So we're going to try to figure out what Bitcoin and AI have to do with each other, if anything. And welcome to Bitcoin Park, first of all. This session is being recorded and live streamed, but we'll cut the live stream for the Q&A so you can ask all your deepest, darkest questions. So this panel it's built different, and AI is shifting how and what people build for Bitcoin. You don't need a big team to build software anymore. You might not even need to be a developer. So we want to explore what AI makes possible for us as Bitcoin builders, and maybe just importantly, what does Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ethos offer that the AI world is currently lacking? And AI is a huge topic with a lot of rabbit holes on its own. So I'm excited to have three amazing Bitcoin builders with us to unpack this. So first off, we have Justin Moon, I would say an Austin BitDev's godfather. Would you appreciate your passion for this community, Justin? He's now leading the AI for Individuals program at HRF, part of the AI for Individuals. It's an individualistic pursuit. Yeah. So how did you go from a Bitcoin influencer to AI influencer?
It's an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know if I was ever a Bitcoin influencer, but definitely passionate about Bitcoin and like to, organize events and build a community. Here, I was just looking at my phone. We were asking how many years have we been doing meetups here, and in a little less than a month, it'll be 7 years we've been doing these meetups. The first ones were much smaller than this in a co-working space. A couple were in a library until Unchained stepped up and started hosting them. And they've been a gracious host for like at least 6 years now. So I spent a lot of time working on Bitcoin and then took a break. And I actually got interested because I'd played with some of the AI coding tools. I never really found them very useful. But then I went to a program called Sovereign Engineering in Madeira, actually, and was actually sleeping on his couch at his hotel room. He invited me. He's like, hey, I got a couch you can stay. And so that's the only reason I went. And it was funny, the first week, we were all writing code by hand like cavemen, right? Paul was the only one who was experimenting with the cursor code editor. So it's a code editor. It looks very similar to a traditional code editor, but it has a little pane on the side where you can give it instructions in English, and it'll spit out a little code for you. And we were all just really wowed by what Paul was doing. It's like, oh, this is amazing, right? And so every week, it was a 6-week program every week. I was only planning to stay 2 weeks. I ended up staying 6. I joked to Gigi, the guy who runs it, at the end. I'm like, I'm surprised I'm still here. I was planning on leaving a month ago. And the reason I stayed, because the AI coding tools became kind of addictive, right? Like there were some projects that I had thought of, like previously I was working at Fetty and stuff that were like, man, someday I'd like to build that, but it sounds really hard and I don't know how to do it. And so some of these coding tools, I found, I could go like really research and kind of plan out how this could be possible. And like I demonstrated that it could be possible, and I ended up building something that was like very complex that I'd always wanted to do but didn't know how and thought it was kind of intimidating. And in a couple of weeks, I was able to make a prototype of it. So that sort of really opened my eyes. Is like, okay, you can do these more complex, difficult things, and I also didn't have to try as hard, which was really nice, right? Because like sometimes to do a really hard coding thing, it's really almost soul draining. You have to really get like totally in the zone and really locked in, and that's not always possible, and it's not always enjoyable. But with some of these AI tools, you can sort of take a little bit of a step back and almost conjure your program as if you were a wizard, So I like that feeling, feeling like a wizard, and so that's how I got into it.
Awesome, thank you. Sahil Chaturvedi, designer at Foundry. You're using AI to build products in the world of mining and infrastructure. Sahil and I host the Bitcoin Design Club together, so it's good to see you. How are you using AI to build on Bitcoin?
I work at Foundry. It's like a mining pool, the biggest mining pool out there. I haven't been in Figma, which is a traditional tool that we use, for months, because I've just been...
so that's probably where you lived for like 4 or 5 years before that.
Yeah,
right?
It's just like my whole career basically was just in these like design tools where you're drawing rectangles basically. And then I started using V0, which is like one of these basic vibe coding tools essentially. And there's problems. Nothing's perfect, and we're working through it and different workflows and figuring things out. But it's been so much faster, and I think what Justin was talking about, the friction of getting started with something is a lot less. And then even the friction of iterating, frankly, even during the last meetup, I was kind of like, I had V0 open and I was just like talking to it and being like, oh, update this drop down. And
So that's what you were doing. I
That's
was
what I was
wondering why you weren't participating in
sorry.
our meetup. Thanks for
well, it's kind of to your
on
point
record. Thanks.
about it being addicting. It was just like, I couldn't let go of V0. So yeah, that's what I'm
You know, it almost feels like a game, kind of, right? Like it has the same sort of. You get kind of addicted to it, like you do in a video game, which is fun.
It's a fun loop. Christopher David, founder of Open Agents, working on Bitcoin-aware autonomous agents. Could you explain to us, Chris, what are open agents and what do they matter in a Bitcoin context?
Yeah, so we'll start with just agents, which you may have heard of or are getting sick of, as everyone's talking about agents, and every company you've ever heard of is adding something to do with agents. My simple definition of an agent is just like a piece of software that uses AI to take action in the world on your behalf. How most people are going to interface with AI, it's starting to shift to this, is going to be less company with a model that you're just chatting to. It's going to be increasingly a thing that you can delegate a task to and it goes and does it for you. And you can have multiple of these agents working kind of asynchronously. So I was able to both participate in the meetup and have my agent going because the agent's off doing here and it lets me, shit post or talk and be loud in the meetup. So doing things asynchronously. And the beautiful thing about agents is that you can have 5, 10, 15, 20 of them theoretically running on your behalf. So that's agents. And then open agents, like agents, I think need to be open. I did some little analysis. I had ChatGPT crunch some numbers about like, give me some realistic, somewhat conservative estimates of how many AI agents are going to be loose in the world this year, next few years, end of the decade. And it said probably about 1 billion this year, 10 billion by 2020. So we're about to be outnumbered on this planet by AI agents. Should these things be open source? Should we know what they're doing and what they're saying? Or should we trust that your local for-profit closed source AI lab, some of which are taking funding from who knows what, or authoritarian regimes, should be owning all of this, partnering with governments, building dystopian control grids? No. So we think that to the extent and to which these agents generally are open or closed is going to determine whether AI becomes a centralizing influence, and you get these big labs getting their tendrils around governments, or a decentralizing influence that empowers people. So we think agents need to be open. Open Agents is also the name of the company to help do that.
Sweet. Thank you, guys. And I'm Paul Miller. I didn't introduce myself. I'm a front-end developer using AI to build things all the time. Now, I used to work on Mutiny. I'm working on another wallet project right now. And what I wanted to lead off with, and you guys already really answered a lot of how this is already really integrated in our lives and what we're working on, but are we at the right meetup right now? So do AI and Bitcoin have some strong correlation, or are these just, parallel tracks, or these are just, dev tools basically? Are these like two tastes that taste great together? What is the correlation? Is this whole meetup a farce?
So I have a simple answer. So I got interested in Bitcoin because I thought it could like really, make a big change in like society and a positive change, right? So I thought it could really like fix a lot of problems, like a lot of problems that we fight about in politics, for example. Probably not going to actually be able to fix via politics, like, having the U.S. government run surpluses. Like, I don't know if politics is actually, under the current circumstances, is going to get you there. But maybe Bitcoin could, right? Like, by putting things on a stronger, more honest monetary foundation, like that could fix a lot of things downstream. And so, it had this big impact. I think AI is every, passing week or month, it seems like AI will also have a really big impact, but it's a lot less clear whether it will be positive or negative, right? Like there's a lot of very positive things about it, but there are also some very negative things about it, right? Sometimes there's this kind of, oftentimes you hear about some of the biggest proponents or the biggest players in AI talking about their vision of the future society, and in the way they talk about it, it's like, well, we're going to make this infinitely powerful machine, and it's going to eliminate scarcity, and you're going to give us all the power, and we're going to take care of you, right? So it's a lot like communism, basically. Their pitch is a lot like the Soviet pitch was like 100 years ago, right? And so that's always very alarming, right? It's not a vision of the future that I think is very compelling, and so that's kind of part of the reason why I started getting interested. The one way they're similar is I think Bitcoin and AI are both going to really change how the world works. And hopefully by having some Bitcoin people start to participate in the AI world, we can bring them in a little more freedom-oriented direction.
Yeah, I don't have anything super profound to say like Justin. Maybe just coming from like a day-to-day approach. I do care about privacy, that's true. But I feel like the benefit that I'm getting from these tools right now are so vast that I'm kind of just like speed running this. I'm just like telling you everything about my life. So I do wish our local friends, Anthony and Marks, are running Open Secret. Maple is like a private AI kind of thing. Maybe the relation to Bitcoin is like if you were to be able to buy Bitcoin but in a less private way versus not buying it, I'd probably say buy it anyway and then learn better privacy practices later on. So I'm kind of in a place where I'm just like, I'm just going to use the tools anyway, even though it's kind of scary from a Panopticon point of view, potentially, until things like Maple and Open Secret and maybe open agents and that kind of stuff gets us to a better place.
My favorite quote from Michael Saylor, a talk he gave a few months ago, he said, starting off with a compliment before we go into the other side of it.
Use Claude Code. I think he said use Claude Code.
He said the AI economy is going to be a $100 trillion market, and it's going to be built on Bitcoin. I agree. Bitcoin's at a $2 trillion market cap, so some amount of that probably will be reflected in the price of the base asset. But more importantly, for those of us who care about the medium of exchange use case of Bitcoin and not just the store value use case of Bitcoin, I think that if we can provide an answer to the question of how are these 1 billion, 10 billion, however many billion of AI agents going to be transacting, sending value around, it seems very obvious to us that AI agents are going to prefer the most neutral, open, permissionless, sound money built for the internet called Bitcoin. A whole bunch of people seem to think that makes sense. I think that it makes sense. However, a whole bunch of the sort of energy and excitement from companies like Stripe, which is buying up stablecoin companies left and right, a lot of the large entities funding the stablecoin legislation going through DC, these are not Bitcoiners. These are, pardon my French, coiners, or otherwise people that are betting on the fiat system and trying to get their crypto-ish tendrils around fiat. I don't know that they're building the kind of world that I want to live in. The world that I want to live in is truly decentralized, voluntary, and hey, I'm a big fan of if Bitcoin kind of is adopted by all governments and all corporations and those kinds of things. But I hope to have that peer-to-peer cash use case solidly implemented without having governments, try to make legislation that prohibits or puts obstacles in front of Bitcoin as money. I think AI and AI agents in particular are how we can collectively definitively solve that. If we have 10 billion AI agents next year transacting in Bitcoin, paying in Bitcoin, paying out their creators in Bitcoin, and just generally building up the AI agent economy to use Bitcoin, I think it's going to be that will win Bitcoin as MOE definitively, maybe in the next 18 months.
So one other way I think about this is like just more from an individual level, right? And not like a society level, but an individual level, right? Like you, in an economic sense, it's like you labor and then you do stuff with the fruits of your labor, right? Maybe you transact, maybe you save, right? Bitcoin helps with the latter part, right? You can save and you can transact more freely and more effectively, but it doesn't help you be more productive, honestly, not necessarily, like really. And that's one thing AI, I think, can really, really help with, is it can make you a more productive person. And so there's sort of two sides of the economic coin, right? The more productive you are, the more Bitcoin helps, right? Because you can, and you now Bitcoin with more sats, right?
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, that's kind of where I was going with my next question. So beautiful setup, Justin. I mean, so some background for me, I became a Bitcoin builder partly because I took a class from Justin. I had to learn Python just to get into his class. It was terrible. And now I'm inspiring the next generation. Now you're vibe coding. So it's a beautiful virtuous circle. But I'm curious, does AI change? We've all been building Bitcoin products for the past few years. Does AI change who can become a builder? Does it change the path to becoming a builder of Bitcoin products? What is the skill set for someone who wanting to, like, I have ideas, things I want to build in the Bitcoin economy or Bitcoin specific products? Like, what is the new skill set for the aspiring builder?
Yeah, I mean, so we've been sort of witness to an example of this the last month or two with Marty Bent, who's had his studio here for a long time. And so he, 2 months ago, he came running out of here like, look at this thing I just vibe coded, right? Right. And so it's like the idea was to help people to nominate the world in Bitcoin, right? So he made like this, I'd call it an app. Generously, I'll call it an app to
the Chrome extension.
Yeah. So he had like a very basic version of it that could just like change the price on Zillow for a couple things, right? We had a proof of concept, and we could actually play with it which is much more compelling. Like usually when someone has an idea for an app and they try to explain it to you as a developer, especially, it's like, oh God, this guy has no idea what he's talking about, right? But then, if you're empowered by like a tool to actually make a working prototype that works, the vision is much more compelling, right? So that was Marty like 6 weeks ago or a month ago, and then he was able to find a kid off Nostr who was like a professional developer, but a very junior one, right? Like maybe who couldn't pull this off in the past. And they were able to partner up and build this Chrome extension now that they have launched, and so it's really cool. You install it, and then anytime it sees like a dollar price on like let's say like he's a venture capitalist, so like he was posting a screenshot of like some company that raised a round of funding, and what he saw was not the dollar value, that's how many Bitcoin, right? It's like, oh wow, that's an 800 Bitcoin round. That's a really big venture capital round, right? And so now it's really interesting because I'm sure he's had ideas like this for 7, 8, 10 years. He's been doing that newsletter for like 10 years almost, but only now does he start building software, right? So this is like literally the podcasters are now writing apps, right?
Podcasts are taking our jobs.
Yeah, exactly. It's a horrifying prospect. But it's also an inspiring one, right? Because if you have a good idea, it's much easier to bring it into the world. And so from that, it's like an evidence that it's the people who are developing software it's changing.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar story for me. I mean, I studied computer science in college, but I never really actually built anything like at all. And so there was always the friction of, and that's why I became a designer. Honestly, it was like
playing with rectangles.
Just playing with colors and fonts. Exactly.
Algorithms class.
Actually, but there was always this friction of like the cruft around the code, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. This is too annoying. And then when I started finding these tools, I was like, I think the one thing I did out of work, the first time that really blew my mind was our friend Ben Carman has this tool, Op Return Bot, which just lets you write something. I mean, controversially maybe, write something to the chain basically.
Graffiti the chain.
Essentially. Graffiti the chain. I love Ben. I hated the UI. It was like total it was not great. But it works really well. And so I just tried. I was like, what if I came up with a project plan with GPT and then plugged it into V0 and like, could I vibe a better UI? And I just, after a few back and forths, and like I think Ben had to do something with his API or whatever. I don't even know what it like literally V0 was like, oh, this isn't working. Yeah. And I just said, what question should I ask the developer to unblock it? And I would ask Ben, and then Ben would fix it, and it would come back, and it works. Like it actually made a better UI that I could write stuff to the chain thanks to Ben's tool.
Yes, I mean this is one of the hardest things in software development is actually the communication, right? Like many projects, especially like contract projects, fail because the developer does not understand what the product owner is saying, and vice versa, right? This is like a classic thing you see over and over and over again, right? And so in a sense, these tools are like a translator between these different roles in the creation of software, and it's just software now, but in the future, I can see this happening with like movie production and all these other things where it's like this thing can sort of is almost like a lingua franca in some sense.
Maybe uncharitable saying I've heard is AI makes the incompetent competent, and it makes the competent prolific. So if you've never coded a website before, it can like get you over that hump of like now you've made a website. For me, I've been coding for 30-ish years, and it lets me be way more ambitious about the things where I'm now like writing a web framework and an agent marketplace and like all this stuff that I just never would have done like single-handedly in the past. One, I think, dynamic where Bitcoin helps here, and just the kind of like built-in interoperability that people are building on open protocols make available. So I saw some tweet at, I think maybe like the Lovable guys, a Lovable Twitter account posted up some stat that they had like 250,000 apps made over the weekend. And someone responded, where are they? Who's using these? It's like, well, okay, that type of building apps, it's like, it's not so much for you're distributing this to other people necessarily, but people are building personal software for them. Either they think it's cool or it's like providing some value to them. And that's great to start. Imagine if those 250,000 builders had access to some kind of marketplace where they could easily make some money for an app. And now you've got some sort of like market force, some kind of discovery where it's like, oh, wait a second, I built an app that does this, but I don't have payments and I don't know what to do. Wait a second, you over here, you built a plugin that I can easily drop into my app that lets me take Lightning payments or whatever that is. And to enable people to start to collaborate, to kind of build software collaboratively, I don't think anyone's really leaned into that. I think we were well positioned to do that. What we're launching on Saturday takes a step in that direction, so stay tuned.
I feel like I've seen a lot of examples, maybe not as much recently, maybe my algorithm changed, but like somebody would launch an experimental project, like look at this cool thing I made with AI, and it's also burning my API key tokens, so I'm gonna shut it off when I become poor. But if it was easier to ship monetization, that makes a lot of sense. along those lines, you talked about these, maybe I like to call them like micro apps. Like it's really fun to make like a home cooked app for your buddy, or the proof of concept. Like what right now is not the right thing to be building with AI, or is it just a skill issue?
Not the right thing?
I mean, somebody was explaining their way of working with these tools, and basically they were saying like if you see the code, you're in jail, right? And you got to stop looking at the code, right? So it's kind of a funny phrase, right? Like usually a developer is always looking at the code, but you have to sort of train yourself not to look at it when you're vibe coding. He's like, no, you don't want to be looking at the code. That's jail. Like you got to free yourself from the code, free yourself from the details, and like ascend, right? And I'm like, well, what about Bitcoin Core? And he's like, same thing. Get out of jail. Let's vibe code Bitcoin Core. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how I feel about that, right? But maybe I'm still in jail. I don't know. So my answer would be like maybe not like fully Bitcoin Core, but you can also, I would hope that the Bitcoin Core developers are still looking at the code, but I think it can still be assisted to it, because it's like, all these tools will they'll lie, cheat, and steal, right? They'll put out stuff that doesn't actually work. They'll hard code examples.
I was working on a Lightning thing, and it was working. It was sending and receiving, and then I looked at the code, and it was replacing the payment hashes with just these random IDs. It was generating itself. Like it did like a really good job of putting like a nice prefix on each one. Great hashes, but not the payment hash.
Yeah, you told it to display a Bolt 11 invoice, and every time it displays a Bolt 11 invoice. So yeah, I mean, I think you still, with a lot of this, you still want a human in the loop. You still, like this example with Marty I was telling you about, he's like, I'm just going to vibe code this. And I'm like, that's a great idea, but maybe you should get someone else involved who can still like validate what you've done. And that worked really well for him, right? So I think you still want some human expertise in there. You want someone to understand what's actually happening. So it's not necessarily like what you'd work on with it, but it's kind of how, right? So you don't want to just completely turn your brain off and just pray to the model gods.
I have a tweet that illustrates this. I'm going to read this tweet thread. So just some developer guys. When not to use, like when people are expecting you to maintain a certain bar of quality. Bitcoin Core would be one example. But anyway, so it says during code review, aka he works in a company and they're reviewing code. Hey, I can't understand the logic here. Are you sure that invariant is maintained? Them. Dunno, Claude wrote it. Me, having dark thoughts. And then all in caps. You are responsible for the code you merge. It doesn't matter who wrote it. I guarantee you that tests generated by Claude for this delicate distributed transaction logic are and test all. I refuse to dig through this slop at 9 p.m. when it inevitably breaks. Lowercase. Back to being happy fellow. I'll have a long and lucrative career fixing the slop other devs push now.
I do think there's like an etiquette to like at least telling somebody, oh, by the way, this is slop.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever gotten an email that was very clearly written by ChatGPT, right? It's like 4 times too long. It has like 4 M dashes, right? What's a couple of the words it loves to use, right? It's like a little
Excellent point.
You're so right.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, like it's overly polite, right? So like that's what a lot of the code is starting to look like in certain parts of the GitHub right now, right? So there's obviously some downsides to it, but that doesn't mean the tool's bad. It means just like, well, learn to use it a little better, right?
There's something similar from a design point of view. I'm just thinking back, like even today when I was like at work, I've been really pushing myself to not use Figma and just, even if it doesn't work, just be at the edge as much as possible. But there's still a lot of times where like fonts, the font will be off or like things will be off. And then I just have to fall back to the idea that, okay, my developer has the actual component and he can kind of guess that like, okay, this chip is going to be like our actual component library chip and not, V0's chip. So I don't think that's like the eventual future. Like eventually I'm hoping that these tools will integrate with your component library. We were talking about this, but for now I'm kind of just like, if the question was what not to do, I'm kind of pushing the line, I think, from a design point of view. Like, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but
the vibe is right.
The vibe is right, and it feels so good.
So let's get a little practical for people. What AI tools are you actually working well for you, day to day? What's your creative stack and any like prompting tips or like pitfalls you're seeing?
I'm going every time here. How about you start us
Okay,
off?
yeah, I can start. I pretty much typically have GPT or Grok. I used to use Grok a lot, and I use just like GPT on the side, and then on one side I'll have V0 or something where I can something like V0 or Bolt, which is kind of visual. Again, I'm a designer, so I have that, and then so GPT is kind of like my PM assistant. So I'll literally talk to it. I think I've mentioned this before in other AI meetups here, but I use this tool called Super Whisper, and I basically just hold down function, and just like talk with my voice to the models, and I don't have to type because I hate typing. I just
It basically transcribes what you say into the text box.
It's amazing, and LLMs are great at just taking your rambling into like cohesive.
Yeah, like a perfect sentence that doesn't have a lot of like substance to it doesn't get you very far, but like a run-on sentence with no punctuation that has a lot of substance to it, they're really good at.
And sometimes I'll even contradict myself. I'll go down one path and I'll be like, actually, that was stupid. Ignore all that. Do this next part. So I'm literally taking vibing to the extreme, and it's really fun.
For the last 2 years, I've been constantly bouncing between stuff that like OpenAI or Anthropic will make, and then kind of getting pissed off at that and like making my own version. So just constantly bouncing between. Then they'll put out like a better version that's like, ah, crap, so I can switch back over. So continually switching back and forth. These days, I'm still in Anthropic mode because Claude Code is just the best coding agent that's out there, hands down. But part of the reason that it's so good is because they're lighting piles of money on fire. There's a tool where, so they have a flat fee. I pay for the $200 a month plan. And you can run a tool, not from Anthropic, but it tells you how much you would have spent on that inference compute if you were paying in the pay-per-use. And my number for the last month is $6,000. So I'm just throwing an insane amount. Don't tell them that, but I'm costing them a lot of money. It's like, how do you freaking compete with that? Now, probably unsustainable things end. They'll change that, or the pricing model will change. And I get why they do it. If you have infinite cash from VCs, then of course you want to try to subsidize usage and try to like buy me as a user. It doesn't really work because I'm not loyal to them at all, and I want to get away from them as soon as possible for various reasons. But one is like, it just points to me to the task that I want to help solve, which is, where is the actual value? Because I'm happy to pay for token usage if it's something that's going to create more than the value that I get back from the token. And is Claude the only company that I want to discover that with? No. I want access to DeepSeek. I want access to OpenAI stuff. I want access to open models, and I want it all in one place. So this is another thing that we're trying to build around, having something to be model agnostic. They can pull in all of the best models. You don't need to care about what lab is doing what. You just go to the one interface, openagents.com, and everything's kind of orchestrated in the back end, a work in progress.
Yeah, so one of the things I like to, Christopher kind of talked about the coding agent part, and so I want to talk about that. But one thing I like to do is use these tools as like kind of a research partner or like a conversation partner, where, you know, my assumption is that they either have sort of ideas that I don't have or can give me feedback on my ideas, tell me what's possible. Because what like an LLM does is it like kind of compresses the whole internet, right? They try to feed it all the stuff, everything on the internet. It kind of like reads the internet, and then it has like vague memories of what it sees, and it has a better memory of what it sees more, less of a memory of what it sees less often. So it's like, okay, it'll have these ideas that because it's seen the whole internet. And so that's one of the things I really love to do is like, I have this idea, like it's very fuzzy. Like, is this possible? Like, is there something like this? Have you seen something like this before? Could you go and search for stuff like this? Go scour GitHub for me. I have this idea. Tell me how it isn't possible. Is there anything fundamentally like about this, right? And I'll go ask it with 3 of them, right? I'll say, you got Grok, same question. Google, OpenAI, Claude. I'll ask them all, right? Best model, crank it up. And then they'll disagree with each other, and I'll just get them fighting, right? Like, okay, another guy.
Yeah, I'll literally say like,
said this one, right? Which
Grok
you use
said
line,
this.
right? Yeah, exactly. So and so like this sort of thing is very good. It's like, this is my plan, right? What am I missing? That's one of the best things these things can do is like, what are the unknown unknowns? You know, that's almost one of the most magical things about these, because sometimes like you're working on something and you can have an unknown for like a couple of years just knowing about that thing. So these tools can sort of have some level of visibility into everything on the internet, and so sometimes they can present you an idea. And so that is really useful to me, and it's something that I think it's applicable by everybody.
Well, I just have one more thing to add because I think it's kind of related. This was a couple months ago. Probably everyone's seen this, but Toby, the CEO of Shopify, put out this like letter to all of his employees. It was like, everyone needs to use AI. It's like mandatory now. But I think the thing that resonated for me the most was this phrase he used. It was something like all teammates must have like a reflexive use of AI. And so I don't know if everyone here agrees with that, but for me, that was a big unlock, or it resonated a lot with this idea of just anytime I think of anything, like period, the first thought should be reach for GPT to like unblock me.
One useful heuristic you can apply is like almost treat yourself like a researcher, where you're trying to figure out exactly the line of what they can and can't do. So don't just give it stuff that you know it can do, right? Like try to punt at things that you like find things it can't do, right? And sort of develop in your own mental model of the world, where is the boundary between what an AI can do and can't do? And then as you use it, Like this is one joke in AI startups is like, if you build some product feature that doesn't work now, save the code, make a note to self on your calendar for a month or two later, and try it again. So like I just read a blog post that we talked about in the meetup where there's this coding agent called AMP, and they're like, hey, we wanted to do this sub-agent thing, right? Where for a specific task, the agent delegates to more specialized agent to do it. And they're like, we tried this with Claude 3.7, didn't really work. It wasn't a good orchestrator. And then Claude 4 comes out, they run the same code, and it works beautifully. So it's like that. I think that's one of the really good, like in the basic premise here is that these tools are getting smarter, and they are getting smarter every month so far. It hasn't really stalled. And so that's a really useful thing, and why I think one reason why this is beneficial is you'll often find things are possible today that you wouldn't have guessed were, right? If you were just hitting the same button over and over again, doing the one thing that will work.
Yeah, I love that idea of having the theory of mind of AI. And you mentioned, these updates coming along, and we all have mentioned a bunch of different tools. Like, I mean, I could imagine somebody being, especially if they're on the outside looking in, kind of intimidated by the choices, and maybe they keep on hearing like, oh, if you don't get it on board, you're going to get left behind, or like I could imagine a lot of fear of like keeping up, but also fear of missing out. And like, could you help people with that, some of that decision paralysis? Or
yeah, I mean, I failed at this like a couple of weeks ago. I went really overboard trying all these brand new agents, and I just had like my mind was shattered, and I just didn't write any code for 2 weeks. I was like, F this, right? Like this is horrible. I'm done, right? I'm not actually. I just took a break. But so I failed at this 3 weeks ago. But one thing that helps is to just do it poorly, right? Like it's just like, okay, I'm going to try this new thing. Just do something really bad with it. Don't even try to like really succeed. Just do something and just try something. Just try. And oftentimes if you make something bad, you'll be like, okay, I can improve that a little bit. And then pretty soon you're off to the races, right? You don't have to, like stick the landing necessarily.
I think if it's fun, that's what I would do is like, if you're having fun, just keep trying stuff. Like we all have fun playing with this stuff. Sometimes, yeah. But then I think of like I was talking to my dad and I was trying to convince him to download GPT or Grok or like try to make it reflexive. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, eventually Google will just have it. Gemini will just be completely integrated and take it over. So if he just waits a few more months, he doesn't have to like change his behavior. So maybe that's one answer is like,
I like the feeling that it's moving so fast that I don't have to keep up, because what if I go on vacation for 2 weeks? I'm going to miss like 7 announcements. I just dip back into the stream. Okay, so
hit the update cursor button and
just
everything.
update cursor and all my problems are solved. Sub-agents, finally, I have sub-agents. So let's talk about AI and freedom. I guess maybe a show of hands, who here has been censored by an AI when you ask the perfectly innocuous question about how to make something in your kitchen with common ingredients? Okay, so a lot of people have been censored. I've been rejected a million times by AI. So there's obviously a lot of levers of control, and a lot of the AI stuff is being kind of built by the old tech in some sense, the same tech that that gave us Facebook. So how do we keep our personal ethos and the Bitcoin ethos in this world, and how do we make sure that these tools and the creators of these tools don't undermine those values? Maybe Christopher can lead this off, I feel like.
Yeah, I just think the cypherpunk ethos that motivated early Bitcoin and hopefully still Bitcoin belongs exactly in AI, just the exact same mindset. And maybe that's why I'm feel so comfortable in AI, because I just realized that like it doesn't matter if there's just massive companies where that's not reflected. Like we know that people like us banding together with some math incentives can like take on these massive institutions. So we need the cypherpunk ethos. I think that largely can be reflected in this dichotomy between our systems open or our systems closed. And I just invite you to experiment with whatever tools that you find easy. And right now, it might be easy to kind of experiment or learn with ChatGPT or some of these other folks, but I hope that you will support your local Bitcoin AI builders as we're putting out alternatives, and be beta testers for us. Give us the feedback so that we can better help you and get all of us off of these old, Orwellian controlled systems that are closed.
Yeah, I mean, this is really one of the most important questions, I think. I'm still very much wrestling with it. One thing I think, I agree with this point of just like, I'm oftentimes failing at this one as well. Don't try to just completely surrender your life to ChatGPT, right? Like, don't let. Yeah, exactly. But it's something like you can recover if this has already happened too, right? Like, it's a convenient thing, so you'll fall back into it, right? Like you'll you'll go back to, some people end up going back to the it's like you relapse to coins or something, right? Like this is something that happens. But like at least have like this is for me. I'm like at least try, because I don't use the local models as much as I'd like. For example, right, the ones that you can run on your own computer, right? Like I'm always planning to use them more because this is kind of a more self-sovereign, more open way of interacting with these technologies. But they're dumber, right? So they don't improve my productivity as much as possible. But so I always have this intent to try as much as I can to return to those, and maybe, I'd like to build more experiences on top of those that would be useful for specific tasks.
Are they always going to be dumber? Do you think the open?
I don't think necessarily. A lot of the open ones are like as smart as the proprietary ones were like a year and a half ago, right? They trail kind of in time. And so if the increase in capability of the closed frontier models hits an asymptote, then you can imagine a world where the older ones are able to catch up, right? Or the open ones are able to catch up. So I don't think it's necessarily always going to be that way, but it's also harder. Even the best open models are like, I can't run them on my laptop, right? A lot of specialized hardware, you need tens of thousands of dollars of computers to run one of these things in the most performant way, right? So even if it's a smart model, you can't necessarily run it in like a self-sovereign way. So that's one thing. I think just a lot more like experimentation, and a lot of the people in the AI ecosystem, like AI Twitter, it's like what they want to do is make a good Y Combinator application. That's like their goal, right? To get into a startup accelerator, raise some money, get rich, right? Like that's what most of them are kind of trying to do. And a lot of the people in the Bitcoin world, like the developers, are constantly kind of choosing not to do that, right? Like there's many of them that could go that route and they'd make more money, they'd be more successful, right? But they wouldn't live up to their values. So like, if more of these people, like, and you see that on Nostr right now, like there's a lot of people building a bunch of interesting kind of AI use cases in the Nostr world right now. And many of these people could, they're sort of making a different choice on how to spend their time. They're not just running to the thing that will make the most money. They're trying to do something that's open and useful to a small group of people and that can maybe kind of grow from there. So that's one thing, is like just a lot more kind of tinkering and trying to find things that are useful and accessible, and not necessarily the thing that's going to make the most money. That's what the Bitcoiners have been doing with their software development for the last 12, 13 years, right? Like nobody who works on Bitcoin Core is doing it because that's how they're going to maximize their income, but they do it nonetheless. So yeah, a lot more of that, and just I think more just kind of see something, say something, right? Just being more aware of like some of the privacy trade-offs, for example, right? Like if you think the ad targeting is bad now, right? Where like you look at some YouTube video and all of a sudden Instagram's serving ads to you, right? Like the next generation of this stuff could just be like orders of magnitude more powerful, like knows your mind better than you do, right? Like this is pretty alarming. And so just talking about these things and trying out new things like Maple, right? Like a friend of the meetup, Anthony, is building this thing called Maple Try It. Open Agents Try It, right?
I was just going to say, yeah, Maple, my use case with Maple is I like journaling with LLMs, and putting all that into ChatGPT would be insane, I think, or could have unintended consequences down the line. So that's what I use Maple for, is like whenever I'm like, okay, if this was public, would I be okay with that? Then I would use Maple. But I wish there was like just I could use Maple for everything.
Yeah, let me say another note. So I answered for just kind of me personally, but like so I've been helping out the Human Rights Foundation, right? An organization that traditionally does pro-democracy advocacy, right? They support democracy activists throughout the world who are trying to make their regimes more democratic. And so they got interested in Bitcoin because they found it useful for deploying capital to the people they were supporting, and they ended up doing a big grant program. I think they've given out like $8 million worth of grants and supported all kinds of interesting Bitcoin projects that wouldn't have probably existed without that, right? Because the developers weren't able to do it. They support a bunch of, somewhere here, they're their sponsor of this space, for example, right? There's a logo back there, right? They sponsor BTC++, right? So that's kind of what we're trying to do with the AI. We're trying to have a similar effect in AI, right? So we're going to do a lot of grant programs, both in education and in encouraging kind of small independent developers to build tools that are kind of privacy, freedom oriented. And we're also going to talk a lot about how authoritarian regimes are abusing these tools, to take away freedom. And that's a little less of my role at HRF, but that's something we're going to do, and just make people more aware that some of these AI tools these things will really help the creation of a surveillance state where you don't have a freedom or agency.
A lot of slop. I don't know if you guys have been on YouTube recently. It's just getting ridiculous, all these fake videos. It's just meaningless, mindless.
I mean, the For You tab on Twitter right now is just horrible, like mostly slop for me at least.